Good morning, Year 10. Yesterday you learned about the quadratic formula and how it can be used to solve equations that don't factorise. So today we're going to take a little bit further and look at how you can solve problems using the quadratic formula, real life problems. Okay? But before we go on to those, I've got a couple of questions that look a little bit different to what you did yesterday, and I would like you to copy these down in your book as I'm going through. Okay? You can pause the video as well and type them into your calculator to make sure you're getting the same as me. Okay, so on this first example then, it looks like a normal quadratic, okay, and if you're rushing into it, you'd think that A was 3, B was 5, and C was 20. But if you look a bit more carefully, there is actually equals 30 on the other side. And one of the rules of using the quadratic formula is that it does have to be equal to 0 or it doesn't work, just like factorising. It's easy enough to sort out. Okay? All we need to do is to pick up the 30 from the right hand side, which is plus 30, and take it over to the other side. That would leave us with 3x squared, because that hasn't changed, plus 5x, because that hasn't changed, plus 20, take away 30, leaves us with minus 10 equals 0. So it's a really simple first step, but if you're not paying attention, you might skip past it and get totally the wrong answers. That's even if it works at all. Okay. Now it's equal to 0 by here. Now we can put our numbers into the quadratic formula. So A is 3, B is 5, and C is minus 10. A is 3, B is 5, and C is minus 10. Okay, I've got the quadratic formula over here. So all I've got to do now is put the numbers in. Remember, the plus minus sign means you do the equation twice, once with a plus and once with a minus. Okay? Right, so we've got on the top minus b, which will be minus 5, because it was positive to start with, plus or minus the square root of 5 squared minus 4 times 3 times minus 10. Now don't forget that minus on the minus 10. Otherwise the calculator will say you've got an error. You'll be trying to work out something that's impossible. All divided by 2 times a, which is 2 times 3. Okay. If you put that into your calculators, once with a plus and then run it again with a minus, you should get, with the plus answer, 1.17. So x equals 1.17. And when you do the whole thing again, and don't retype it all, just change the plus to a minus, you should get minus 2.84. Okay? And for this question, both of those answers are equally valid. Neither of those is wrong. Okay? When we get to problem solving ones, that will change slightly. Okay? So make sure you've got that in your book and an explanation of where the plus 30 went. Okay, let's have a look at the next one when you're ready. Similar type of thing again. On the left we've got a quadratic. We've got 2x squared plus 1x plus 8. And on the right we've got 5x plus 9. And again, it's this stuff on the right that's causing us the problem. Remember that that needs to be 0 before we can use the quadratic formula. So how do we do that? Well, if I take plus 5x to the other side, and it'll go over to where the 1x is, because they are similar terms, it will change to a minus. So that gives us so far the 2x squared, which hasn't changed at all. We had 1x, we're taking away 5x, that leaves us with minus 4x. Okay. Then we do something very similar with the plus 9. It goes over to the 8, because they're both numbers, so they sort of go together, they are similar terms. Again, it changes to a minus. If we're on plus 8 and we take away 9, that leaves us on minus 1. But now we've got 0 on the right hand side. Okay, so I hope you're following. All I'm doing at the beginning here is a little extra bit of algebra, moving it around just to get 0 on the right hand side. Okay, using the quadratic formula now then, we've got that A is 2, B is minus 4 already, and C is minus 1. So when we use the quadratic formula, because it says minus B, and B is already minus 4, that actually turns positive. Then we've got our plus and minus, where we do the whole thing twice. Our square root, And as we saw yesterday, the calculator can sometimes struggle when it's squaring a minus number. Okay, notoriously bad. If you put minus 4 squared into a calculator, it will say minus 16, and that is wrong. Okay, minus 4 squared is positive 16. To help the calculator out, we put the minus 4 into a bracket, and it should all work. Okay, a lot of people forget that step and then can't work out why it's not working on the calculator. So we've done our b squared. Take away 4 times 2 times minus 1. And again, if you forget the minus, it might not work. So you've got to be really careful with your minuses in the quadratic formula. On the bottom, 2a is 2 times 2. If you want to pause the video and try it yourselves before I put the answers up. For the plus answer, I've got x equals 2.22. And for the minus answer, I've got x equals minus 0.22. Okay, and again, because this doesn't have any real life application in this question, both answers are correct. You'd write them both down. Okay, let's have a look at the next one. You should have this one in your book as well as an example. Okay, here we go. Here's our first one now where we're going to use the quadratic formula to actually solve a problem. I want the area of this rectangle to be 50 centimetres squared, and at the minute I've got algebra on the sides. And what I'm after is a value of x so that it all works out as 50. Okay? Now if you go back to your basics from year 7, how do you find the area of a rectangle? We do length times width. Okay? Which are both algebraic expressions, but don't worry too much about that. So, length times width equals area. And if we put in what we know about this shape, the length is 2x plus 1. The width is x plus 1. And we know from the question that the area equals 50. I don't need to put the centimetres squared on, I'm only interested in the numbers. Notice as well I don't need a times sign between the two brackets, they're automatically timesing each other. Okay? Now if you want to stop the video and do a little bit of FOIL to work out what those brackets give us, you should get 2x squared plus 3x, so 2x and a 1x, plus 1 equals 50. Okay? In an exam, just getting that far would get you a couple of marks. Okay? Just being able to set up an equation. Obviously though, as we've seen in the previous questions, we don't want 50 on the right hand side. For us to go any further it needs to be 0, so I need to take the 50 over. It changes to minus 50, so I've got 2x squared plus 3x. I was on plus 1, I'm taking away 50. That leaves me with minus 49, but more importantly, it gives me a 0 on the right hand side. That means now then, I am able to use the quadratic formula. For this question now then, a is 2, b is 3, c is minus 49, so that will be minus 3 at the front, plus or minus 3 squared. I don't need a bracket because it's positive already. Take away 4 times 2 times minus 49. If you miss the minus on this question, the calculator will say that you've got a maths error. It's because you're trying to square root something that is negative. Okay? The mistake you've made is that you've forgotten the minus before the 49. Okay? So 4 times 2 times minus 49. All divided by 2 times 2. That's the 2a part. Okay, so if you get your calculators out, put all that in. What you should get then for your plus solution is 4.26. And when you run it again, with a takeaway sign instead, minus 5.76. Now this is a real question. It's a real rectangle, it has real measurements, it has real area. And in the exam it might say, explain any decisions that you make. Well, what decisions have we made? Well, none so far. But if we go back to our shape, and I want to work out what the measurements of this rectangle are, could they be negative? Well, no, not if it's a real shape. So what we would say now is that the measurements or the dimensions of the rectangle cannot be negative. And that would be you explaining why this time we're not going to take the negative answer. So the dimensions of the rectangle cannot be negative. Now that often happens in these real life questions. You still get a positive and a negative, and you've just got to know to only use the positive answer. So x equals 4.26. Okay. We could go back up now. So if x equals 4.26, and I go back to the top, we've got 2 times 4.26 plus 1. That will be the length, and that's 9.52 centimetres. And we've got 4.26 plus 1, that's 5.26 centimetres. And if you times them by each other, you get 50.07. The reason it's not exact is because when we used the quadratic formula, we did do a little bit of rounding to get our two solutions. So it's not perfect. If we want to be perfect, we'd need to keep all the decimal places. But we found a value of x, and we've got the dimensions of the rectangle, and we've got 50 or near enough 50 as our area. Okay. Now the last one I want to show you, and you don't need to write this one down, but it'd be a good idea to watch. This is from a GCSE exam. Okay. Maybe I'll start it off and you can try and finish it off. We've got a rectangular box, and it's open at the top. So here's our box. And we're told that the measurements are, I'll make it 3D, there we go, look. The measurements of the box are that it's 2x plus 6 long. It's got a width of x, and it's got a height, which we don't need till later, of x minus 3. And we are told that the area of the base is 59. Well, the base is this part here. Okay. So the area is 59. And we've been given an equation to make. We've been asked to show that 2x squared plus 6x minus 59 equals 0. Well, we don't need this x minus 3 because that's nothing to do with the area. So what we do need is the 2x plus 6 and the x. Again, it's area. So you would start by timesing those two measurements together and putting it equal to 59. And you should be able to solve, or not solve, but you should be able to get something looking like that if you expand the brackets and take away the 59. If you move down then, it says solve the equation, give your answers to 2 decimal places. Well, that's a bit of a clue that you're using the quadratic formula. Okay. So just put the right numbers in. Be careful with the minus 59. You should get, if you've done it properly, that x is 4.13 when you do it with a plus, and x is minus 7.13 when you do it with a minus. Okay. Again, it's a real problem. X can't be negative. It doesn't ask us to explain it, but we'll still say that it can't be negative. And then the third part of the question, if I scroll down, look, it says, hence calculate the volume of the box. State clearly the units of your answer. This is the easiest part, especially with a calculator. We've got our value of x is 4.13. So, put it back into our 3 measurements. So, the length is 2 times 4.13 plus 6. X is just 4.13. Then we've got 4.13 minus 3. To find the volume of a box, you would multiply all 3 measurements. You should, if you've done that properly, so get your calculators out, work through it, you should get a volume of 66. Oops, put that in the wrong place. Oh no, not. The volume of the box is 66.60 centimetres cubed if you multiply out all 3 dimensions where x is 4.13. Okay, so there's just a few different examples of using the quadratic formula to solve a problem, especially when you've got numbers or terms on the right hand side that you need to move over to the left before you start.